again, the things that I kind of pull out from this, or that I really kind of latch onto, are a couple of things. Firstly, it is novel technology. So it's a novel hardware technology that aligns with the megatrend. The megatrend is all the cool AI stuff, right? All these data centers and all this, like, what is it, 7% of the US economy or something, or more, is reliant on AI working, right? Which is basically a make or break moment for AI. Like, it has to work. Well, they have to, well, not that it has to work, they have to make it work, right? So the things that at a high level I kind of latch onto here is firstly the problem, very, very clearly stated, and I get what's going on there. And that we're talking about energy infrastructure. The second most interesting thing is this, that I see some proof that this isn't just like a on the drawing board type situation, that there is some hardware going on here. They call hardware hard for a reason, because it's difficult, right? So the fact that there is stuff existing, hardware is a lot easier to patent than software is. So like here, my interest is piqued. I literally don't care about this slide at all. It's one of those like, not to be crass, but I call them like no shit markets. It's like, oh, you are crushing in fintech. Like fintech is a big market. No shit. Like there's a lot of money in real estate. Like no shit. Like you can solve cooling for massive power plants and data centers. Like you're gonna print. Like if it works, you can print money, right? So the market size, I barely care about, because it's just it's effectively there is no ceiling if you can crack it. Or if you can crack it and own it, there is no ceiling. Traction, also DOE, basically like I didn't really read anything else other than just like if the DOE signs off on it, it's golden. Or that is validation that will get you into all these other spots. And then the fact that you are not raising pennies, right? This is a $5 million raise. It's like, yep, you are going to need $5 million to do this for sure. Those basically, like if I had to skim quickly or call those things out and put together like a deal memo, I would basically highlight these 4 things, right? Those are the things that stick out to me. Now, let's go slide by slide. So again, I always love seeing product on the cover. For this one, slightly different because it's deep tech. It's a little bit more abstract. And so maybe on the cover, we don't have an abstract energy kind of situation going on here. Let's have a data center, a power plant, something that starts to give us the vibe or the environment of where you're at and what's going on. So maybe this is like, maybe we've got a nuclear plant going on. Fisted attempted a cooling tower here. So there's maybe a nuclear plant, some transformers, whatever, maybe a data center. Maybe we've got like racks of servers, right? Kind of with all the gubbins going on. Something to that effect, like something that shows us not just the product, but the environment, the scenario, the atmospherics, the people that are around the product, that is not so abstract that we can't get it. Because I get that this is cooling, right? But it's so abstract that it doesn't really tell me anything. It's just pretty. And I'm not a huge fan of just like aesthetics for the sake of aesthetics. Every element that you put on a slide can tell a part of the story, or it can contribute to the story. It can show you where things go, what's going on, what it's doing, all that. So here again, I would just like a title of whoever the presenter is, right? Whoever is presenting, I want their name and I want their email, right? Again, so that we can reach out to them easily. This executive summary, like when you have big blocks of text like this, just going like font size maxing is not necessarily the best way to improve legibility, right? What I would suggest for something like this is you can drop a little bit of the aesthetic, right? And if you take a block of text like this, and it's all just like way to the edges, right? It just becomes this kind of intimidating wall of text. You can actually take the font size, so the points of the font, and decrease it by 2 or 3 steps of what you would think, and then increase the line height of the lines, each one, and then condense the columns to make this a 2-column layout, right? That way you will, because you have you have vertical space to work with here, right? You've got lateral space here that you can grab, and you will have a little bit more vertical space here to work with as well. So maybe this then becomes like exact summary along here, and then you've got 2 points, 2 points. And if you condense these will become longer, but because you've grabbed this lateral space here, sorry, this vertical space here, you can get away with that. And the thing is that if you bring down the font size, right? So font down, and you increase the breathing room around it, it becomes easier to read. So even though the font size is smaller, it's actually easier to read. It's easier to digest, right? Ernest's deck from earlier, his deck actually does that, right? If that was a deck to be read, it is actually quite an easy deck to read because smaller fonts, more breathing room, right? You can see that kind of in practice here, right? The line height between these is maybe a 1.0 or a 0.8. This is probably a 1.0 or a 1.2, right? And that's percentages. It's like one, depending on the tool that you're using to make slides. I do everything in PowerPoint. I just team PowerPoint all day. But all of the different editors will have similar. This imagery in the background here is like servers. This is the vibe, right? This is the atmospherics and the vibe, and kind of illustrating what's going on in the background literally in the background of the company. Who are you serving? What's going on? This I like. This is very similar to the approach that I use on my own slides when I'm doing decks, right? What I don't like about this slide is that there are these awkward spaces here, and that we're using a line break or a key line for cooling is the largest single operator. Like this should just be a title, right? This is so chunky that it's too big to be a title, so this should be a subtitle, and this should be your chunky headline, right? Because as you notice in the initial skim, I'm not reading anything, I'm skimming. And so if I can just go cooling, so even this, I wouldn't even read the whole thing, I would just go cooling, largest costs after rent and power, okay, got it. And then I just move on, right? I'm not necessarily going through word by word. Heat, not compute, will be the ultimate limit to the AI era. Data centers can no longer increase compute without first solving the heat bottleneck. This is great, right? A lot of people are aware that data centers are the problem. And then you dig in, it's like, well, it's not actually just data centers, it's also power. It's not actually just power, it's water and real estate. You can't just like buy a field in Ohio and slap a data center on it. There's community problems that are coming up. It's becoming a political issue. There's electricity costs that are becoming an issue, environmental issues. There are like diesel generators on a 15-year back order or whatever. Like it's crazy. Right? Things are getting really wacky. So and all of that is needed to actually get into to actually get a lot of this, like the promise of AI to play out, right? Okay, the breakthrough. I like this look and feel. I'm not a huge fan of going into the clip art look and feel here, right? Even though it is illustrative, I would try and keep it somewhat consistent. But it's as I mentioned with the previous deck with Hamid's deck for Boxplane. You could forgive a lot of design sins if the company is compelling, right? So, 20 years into my design career, I am ironically saying, don't worry too much about the design if the company is good. But design does eventually play a big role. And if you can have great content and great design, you just start destroying meetings, right?
What tool do you suggest to make that? My founder's been working hard to figure out the right illustrative tools.
Absolutely. So the tricky thing about solving some of these things is not necessarily a tool, it's more of an approach, right? So whatever tool he's using to create this is actually quite a decent diagram, right? So what do we got here? We've got 60% waste heat. It's an infographic, basically. 60% waste heat, loss to atmosphere, power generation loss, 100% input energy, fuel renewable, etc. 40%. Like what's going on here is that we've got these like layers and layers and layers of content that are kind of going down, and these caveats, right? The tricky thing is that like the audience isn't necessarily going to drill down into all of these little things on first pass, right? If they spend a lot of time with it and really pick the deck apart, which these days, a junior associate or an intern who has something to prove are the only people that will do that, right? Because any GPs or VCs are going to skim it. It's like, patent, they're already building something, DOE's a contract, okay, cool, let's have a chat. That's basically like, and they'll kind of skip through everything else. Now, if I had to redo this, what I would do is I would keep the imagery here, right? But I would separate out some of these text lines and not try and connect them to the literal spots, right? I would take these lines and just turn it into a process. So let me just do a little squiggle here, like so, right? What I would do is I would get rid of this, get rid of all this, right? So that all we have left is just the icons, right? And then below it, I would have a much cleaner step-by-step of each stage so that this becomes just a linear block of content, like so, right? And I'll show you an example of this, where the illustration doesn't necessarily have to be like the be-all, end-all. Like, it doesn't all have to be kind of tied up in the illustration. It can be a whole bunch of things. So, where are we? I'm going into old versions of my workshop here and putting some stuff out. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, here, this is a slide from an old client of mine, SEP Networks, right? It was a search and rescue oriented mesh network for bumping cell signal to a mesh, and then that to the next, and that to the next, and extends range over kilometers, and you can send high, heavy data packets like video and audio and all this kind of stuff along, right? Now, the tricky thing about this one is that, like, this is the original slide, right, that we had from Art, the founder. Now, what we did with it was, instead of these kind of somewhat generic things, the AI stuff that we put together looked like this, right? And I'll break down what we actually did with this slide, right? So what's going on here is that these are all created in Midjourney. So who is using it? What does it look like in their room? What does the equipment look like on the other operator's side, right? There we go. Okay. So what's going on here is a couple things. So we removed all of the trying to connect these items, like, instead of having them right on top of the product, right? We separate them out into their own linear flow. So I can just kind of, if I land on this slide, the first thing I'm seeing is this, right? It's a rescue crew out in the middle of nowhere trying to organize, right? Doesn't actually say a whole lot. It's just saying that because the mission of the company is that they provide a connectivity in any situation, right? So where cell towers have gone down, where the communications infrastructure is all screwed up, they can jump in and spin up just with normal devices. They don't need to use sat phones or Iridium stuff or whatever, right? They can just use those same devices, but with these like long range Wi-Fi networks, essentially. So rescue worker, search and rescue worker in a command center using a normal router, the set branding, right? That's the module. And the module is on just Mali on a backpack, somebody on top of a mountain using a phone. And then it's being bounced and the signal's being bounced over a kilometer, right? So there's not a whole lot of explanation happening here. All the explanation happens in this linear flow here. So what we would learn from this and how I would apply it here is that you could even just turn these into photos or into whatever. Like if you want to bump up the production quality a little bit and do some mid-journey prompting, get rid of all this, right? Turn it into these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like, 6, 7, however many you want to use. And if you want to go for a longer process, just make another slide, right? That then goes on to do whatever else. 6, 7, 8, right? Whatever. If there are more steps, or if there is branching step, right? Because understanding how it works is really important, for sure. But you don't have to do it in this slide, because this is kind of a slide in and of itself, sitting nested within another slide, right? So my eye is kind of going all over the place. So what I would, if I were to recreate this one, I would probably do, on this slide, I would skip the markup entirely and replace this with a rendering of the product. But when I say rendering, that can be a literal, CAD drawing. Sorry, I'm here. That could be a literal CAD drawing of the product. It could be a literal CAD drawing or 3D rendering of the product itself, or it could be a representation of what will be built, right? It doesn't have to be the actual thing. It just has to be a compelling vision of what you're creating, right? Mm-hmm. So, let me actually just make sure that you have this here, because these all stay live after the session as well. So you can always come back to reference these again later, right? So show me a rendering that's just an image, and give me the cliff notes or the bluff here of what are the core features of the platform. This is almost what I would call the solution simple slide that I've been talking about with other people today, right? Like one sentence, the couple features, the mock-up, right? This is basically a solution simple slide. In between here, yeah, so this is compelling, right? There's compelling info here on who the founders are and what they're up to. So in between problem and solution, so I've been mentioning again with the others this evening, credentials, because this is a relationships-based, regulatory-based business on top of it being a hardware thing. So I want to see what's going on with the team, right? Okay, so I would basically turn this slide into, top half is the image process, bottom half is a linear flow, right? So it is easy to skim, easy to read, still looks cool, right? Looks cool, easy to read. Okay, and then we have and this would be a separate slide, right? This would be a separate slide here. Then we have the simple, right? Simple. Then we have the detailed. So you kind of get everybody on board understanding what the deal is, and then you can double down and go into details on the how it works slide, right? Okay. The breakthrough system pilots in the field, revolutionary technology, architecture. Okay. I would break these out and not put them all on just one slide. I would have these in a bunch of places spread out throughout the deck. If you can find a cool one to put on the cover, you can do that. I would put one of these here. I would put one, in the executive summary, I would put one on this rendering slide. I would have some of these things maybe represented in here, right, in the process, because you want to help the audience get to know your product and understand what is it that you're building, because you as founders, you as the internal team will be a lot more familiar with it than the external audience will be, right? Okay, massive market opportunity. These dollar amounts need to be bigger. So there's a typography trick I call just double stacking, which is basically Also, just be definitive. Like if it's 210 to 240, just say 230, right? If it's 220 to 240, just say 240, right? Or 250. Just give it a number, because it's almost certainly not going to be correct anyway. So it doesn't matter whether you do a range or whether you do a definitive number. But there is likely you're going to want to have a bigger difference between your 1, 2, and 3 markets, right? What is your initial market? What is your secondary market that you expand into? And if you were to blow this out of the water and be a huge global success, what does that market look like? It's probably more than 250 billion, to be honest.
I know, it's just obnoxious. It's like,
hey?
It's so obnoxious. They're trying to temper it somehow.
I know,
It's
but
like,
that is,
grows every day.
that's the environment we're in right now.
Yeah.
Everything is kind of wild because I was in Saudi Arabia a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and I heard this great comment about some of the things that are kind of being focused on in the ecosystem. And it's like AI, data centers, chips, energy.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, all right, got it. Like, message received loud and clear. So like these are, and it's because AI is basically just a stand-in for software.
Yes.
So this is as if you were just saying software in 2000. It's like,
Yep.
the software is going to eat the world. Well, it already did. And now it's like, this is just software.
On steroids.
Web 4.0, Web 5.0, whatever you want to call it, right? This is just like the next big iteration. And the tricky thing about AI, about any company in AI, and the reason why these market sizes get so obnoxious and so enormous, is that theoretically, they can do any intellectual task you can conceive of, right? Theoretically, because what they do looks like intelligent work, right? It's not necessarily the same nuanced, intelligent work that a human would do necessarily. It's not creative in the same way. It can do a facsimile of creativity, and it can do things that are arguably creative within a certain rubric, right? But the chaos and the illogical and the nuance and the new and the unexpected are still very much kind of hallmarks of human potential and human work.